All right, so we're diving deep today, and I'm excited about this one. We're going to be looking at Psalm 127,
Okay,
and we're using the New Living Translation from YouVersion.
great.
This psalm is kind of interesting. Think of it almost like a song that pilgrims would sing on their way up to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And tradition says that this was written by Solomon. So, the wise King Solomon, known for his wisdom.
Right.
And what we're going to try to do today is uncover some of that wisdom. It's kind of packed into these few short verses.
Yeah,
There's some really interesting stuff here that I think maybe will surprise you.
I think so too. It's a very short psalm, but it's packed with meaning and kind of surprising insight.
Yeah, it gets right to the point. So verse 1 starts out and says, "Unless the Lord builds a house,
Right.
the work of the builders is wasted.
Mm-hmm.
Unless the Lord protects a city, guarding it with sentries will do no good."
Yeah. I think what jumps out right away is that this is setting up a contrast between our efforts and a reliance on a higher power. And it's saying that without that higher power, our efforts are ultimately in vain. And it uses those kind of practical examples of builders and guards.
Yeah, you think about people who are building a house or people who are guarding a city, like really important roles.
Essential, yeah.
But it's saying even those things, like without God, without the Lord's blessing, like it's all for nothing.
Right.
That's a kind of a sobering thought.
It is. It is. It makes you kind of reevaluate your own efforts, in life. And are we doing things in our own strength, or are we relying on God?
Yeah. I mean, where in your own life, if you really think about it, do you just feel like you're banging your head against the wall? You're working so hard and nothing seems to be happening. Are you relying on God? Are you praying about it? Are you inviting him into that?
Yeah. And it seems like maybe that's the first step, is to recognize our need for God.
Yeah.
And to involve him in our efforts. And then it goes on to say in verse 2, it is useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously working for food to eat, for God gives rest to his loved ones. So again, this image of toil, from morning till night, and anxiety, anxiously trying to provide for your family.
That just resonates with so many people today.
It really does, yeah. That hustle culture, the idea that we have to constantly be striving and achieving. And this verse is kind of saying, well, hold on a second. God gives rest to his loved ones.
Yeah. That rest, I mean, that's a gift.
It is. It is.
Like being able to rest is huge. I
Yeah.
mean, that's something that a lot of people long for. And I think this idea of it being a gift from God, that's really powerful.
Yeah, it challenges us to kind of reevaluate our priorities.
Right.
Is it all about work and achievement, or is it about, having that balance?
Yeah. Finding that balance.
Yeah.
So then it kind of switches gears, it seems like, in verse 3.
Right. It says, children are a gift from the Lord. They are a reward from him. So here we're seeing children being presented as a blessing, as something to be treasured, as a reward.
I mean, to think about how many people struggle to have children.
Absolutely.
Like it's a huge desire for so many people, and to view that as a reward.
Yeah.
I think that's really encouraging.
It is. And then in verse 4, it continues this idea of children as a gift, but it uses a different metaphor. And it says, children born to a young man are like arrows in a warrior's hands.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not just that they're a passive gift, but they're tools of strength, and they're given to someone who's full of vigor, a young man, a warrior.
I mean, arrows are meant to be, shot out.
Exactly. Yeah. They have a purpose. They have a direction.
Yeah. It's almost like, you equip your children so they can go out and do what they're supposed to do, fulfill their purpose.
And then it goes on to say in verse 5, how joyful is the man whose quiver is full of them.
Yeah.
So a full quiver, meaning, he has many children. And it says, he will not be put to shame when he confronts his accusers at the city gates. Now, the city gates in that time were not just a place to enter the city. It was a place of public life, where people would gather.
Right.
And legal matters would be settled and debates would happen. And so to not be put to shame at the city gates means to have a good reputation, to be respected, to be honored. And this verse is saying that a man with many children will have that honor, that respect.
That's interesting. So it's almost like having a strong family.
Right. Yeah. A large family provides support and security.
Yeah. It gives you that social standing that yeah, I mean, I think even today, like we see that,
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, family is still highly valued in many cultures.
Right.
And having a strong family can definitely be a source of strength and support.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we think about, what Psalm 127 is really getting at here,
Yeah.
we're talking about, first of all, recognizing our need for God,
Right.
finding that rest and that balance in our life,
Hmm.
and also recognizing the blessing and the gift of family.
Yeah. And I think, if you pull all those threads together, it seems like the psalm is saying that true success and security,
Right.
they don't come solely from our own efforts. It's
Yeah.
it's this kind of interplay between our efforts, reliance on God, and the blessings of family.
Yeah, it's that kind of three-legged stool,
Yeah.
You need all three of those things to really have a strong foundation.
Mm.
So as we, wrap up our deep dive into Psalm 127,
Yeah.
we see this emphasis on acknowledging God's role in our lives. We see the importance of rest and balance. And then we see this real emphasis on the value of family.
Yeah. Family as a gift, family as a source of strength.
Mm-hmm. And as you kind of, go throughout your day to day, just think about that. Think about, what are you striving for? What are your goals? And are you trying to do it all on your own? Are you inviting God into that? Are you finding that balance? And how are you nurturing those family relationships?
Yeah. Where do you see the connection between your own efforts and what you might consider blessings or forces outside of yourself,
Yeah.
in terms of achieving your goals and finding peace? I think that's a question worth pondering.
Yeah.